Greetings everyone. This is a 300 slide PowerPoint presentation, which is about half the size of the larger presentation that we use for members of the press and for watchdog organizations and people who need references for everything that we say. So this is a shorter version. And most of the references in here are valid because the other sections are omitted. So most of the references in this presentation correspond to a C-SPAN video on fiancé visa fraud given by the US Senate Committee on Immigration. Okay, let's get started. So this is basically who we are. Advocates for change for a corrupt fiancé visa system, advocates for a safer America. We have some really bad national security exposure here due to the fiancé visa process. And advocates for loving couples who are victims of fiancé visa denials. It's these denials that actually cause the national security exposure. So our first topic here is US Senate Committee on Immigration. This is a C-SPAN video, and you can find it by Googling or going up to YouTube and looking for C-SPAN video, US Senate Committee on Immigration. And the title of the meeting is Fiancé Visa Fraud. These are the major players of this meeting, the senators. You see here on the top left, the Senator Grassley, Senator Feinstein, top right, Senator Dick Durbin, and then you have the leadership team of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security / USCIS, and also ICE, but they're not involved too much in fiancé visa fraud. They clean up afterwards. And then we have the Department of State / U.S. Consulates, also represented here on the leadership team, which is panel number 2 in this C-SPAN video. We're not going to talk about panel number 1. Okay, so I'm not going to read every slide here. The idea is to get through this as fast as I can. I suggest that you pause this video and read the slides. This is Senator Dick Durbin, who kicks off the meeting as soon as Senator Grassley announces the meeting. And then after that, both of these senators leave. So this is one issue with the C-SPAN video is this is like a court hearing where the jury, where 2 people from the jury come in and listen to the beginning of a trial, and then, 5 people come in the middle, and then everybody leaves and 2 people come in at the end, and that's the end of it. No single juror hears the whole case, and this is similar to that. No single senator hears all of this hearing, even though they called the meeting. They summoned in the leadership team. Nobody saw the entire meeting. This is panel 1, which is some advocates for basically a crackdown on the fiancé visa process to protect American citizens from getting duped from foreign fiancés, which granted is a major problem, but kind of our viewpoint is, what can we do about this? I mean, it's the fiancé that's getting duped. If a foreign fiancé, it's a U.S. citizen getting duped. A foreign fiancé is out to dupe a U.S. citizen to come over here for citizenship. Now, if the US Citizen Petitioner can't tell by knowing their own fiance, how do they expect a government system to pick these people out? And I don't think they really do plan on, getting anything instituted that would be able to select a corrupt foreign fiance. But what they're asking for is a better response after the fact, after they find out that they've been duped by ICE and other immigration people to get the foreign fiance kicked out of the country, whether they gain citizenship or not. Okay, this is the panel 1. I'll just tell you who they are. Donald Neufeld, David Donahue, David Renaud, Matthew Emmerich, and Greg Navarro. Greg Navarro is the guy on the right who was a ICE guy who, like I said, ICE cleans up afterwards by finding target groups of fiancé visa cases who turn out to be fraudulent, and they slip through the system, and then ICE finds them after the fact. So I'm gonna go over these people's names a little bit. You'll see here, this is Neufeld, and he introduces he's the associate director for service center operations. So these are the several service centers if you are a US Citizen Petitioner and you send in an I-129F packet, you send it to one of a few service centers, and then it can also be sent to another service center because of workload. But this is an associate director of US Service Center Operations. And some of these people give an introduction by saying, how many people their area employs. Like the service centers are staffed by 3,681 employees and 1,800 contractors. I don't really know who these contractors are, but this is not ICE, so the contractors wouldn't be law enforcement people. Most of these contractors would be U.S. federal government consultants. So there's like a consultant to every 2 employees here. We are also federal government consultants, so we know what's going on and we know how to advise a federal government. Also, I want to mention here that these are screen captures from the C-SPAN video. We encourage everybody, no matter who you are, to watch this entire video. As a matter of fact, you might want to pause this video now and search for this other video and listen to the whole thing. It's 1 hour and 50 minutes long, almost 2 hours long. But it's something that everybody needs to see because this is critical. The leadership team here of the DHS and DOS give you the spiel on how the system works, and it's important to know how it works. So I'm just showing you here that these screenshots are paused. They also give a minute mark. So this Donald Neufeld, you could find him speaking at 42.33, 42 minutes into the C-SPAN video. This is David Donahue. This is David Renaud. This is Matthew Emmerich. And this is Greg Navarro. So right after this introduction, Senator Grassley and Senator Durbin leave, and Senator Feinstein pops into the meeting. Now, Senator Feinstein comes in late and leaves early, but she, as soon as she gets in, she goes to work on these guys, and she makes a few really, really good points here. One is this is basically this meeting right here, which was in I think it was May of 2017, is the second meeting, and this is when the Senate Committee on Immigration summoned the leadership team back to ask them what's been done since San Bernardino, because in the San Bernardino, after the San Bernardino attack, they set up the initial meeting with these guys and pointed out, what's got to change. So this is where Feinstein goes to work on these guys and asks them, what's happened since the first one. So up at the top here, you see Ranking Member Senator Feinstein grills a panel on the San Bernardino attack, the first terrorist attack, where one of the terrorists was a U.S. petitioner and the other was a fiancé who got to the United States on a fiancé visa. So Emmerich replies that the San Bernardino reviews have been done and the additional measures in the screening process have been identified. Also, some forms were modified and interviewers were trained on the changes. So I don't know, if you're out in California and you're a family member of the San Bernardino attack victims, I wouldn't feel real confident that these changes are going to change anything. The review's been done, additional measures in the screening process have been identified, forms were modified, and the interviewers were trained. So this is what we look at as the first sign of a smoke and mirrors show from the leadership team. And what's sad about this is the Senate, no single senator was around for the entire meeting. They came and they went. And I think that's part of the reason that the senators did not realize that this is basically a smoke and mirror show that they're seeing here. Okay, the second issue that Senator Feinstein brings up is 274 cases identified by our ICE investigation, where human traffickers got their victims into the United States on work visas and fiancé visas. I don't know what the breakdown is there. Nobody mentions it, but I would imagine most of them came in on work visas, but there are some, there's probably a considerable amount of fiancé visa people that came in. And then an additional 500 came into the United States on family and fiancé visas. So this is a load here. This is 774 people entering the country that are actually the target groups. One of the target groups. So Emmerich replies that the interviewers are trained to look for human trafficking indicators. So this is something that for some reason the senators just take that as an answer. A consultant wouldn't take that as an answer. There's just no way. Like I say on the bottom, we cannot help but wonder what a human trafficking indicator is. So on this next page, I'll get to that in a minute. So this is Grace Wong, who is a member, one of the director level people of the Asia Pacific Institute on Gender-Based Violence. She's a policy director. So she's an advocate for victims of human trafficking. And human trafficking is a major, major issue all over the world. And yes, it happens in the United States. And what I put down here is victims of human trafficking tend to be duped by low-level criminals that cannot be predicted. And we've been advised on that. It's hard to predict, who these criminals are. People might think that they only search for unassuming young victims, but that's not true. The victims vary a lot in age and nationality and social status and a lot of other things. So here's a couple of guesses at what we think maybe human trafficking indicators are. If a human trafficking victim comes in from another country, then you might be able to go to another country and find out if somebody has a history of being a runaway, maybe a previous drug history, and we wonder how they get that information from some countries. It's I don't know whether they actually get it or not. Low income might be another indicator, but then low income would also coincide with some people's legitimate bona fide fiancés. So like in the Philippines, where most fiancés come from, income down there is pretty low. Here's another sting operation here done by ICE. And we put at the bottom of the screen, it's a good thing that ICE is able to seek out and find some human trafficking rings in the United States, because we certainly can't rely on the USCIS and the US Consulates to stop victims of human trafficking. You see a little graphic on the lower left, 400 victims of human trafficking in fiscal year 2015. 1,437 arrests made. So these 1,437 people were involved in bringing in 400. So that's another 400 people who slipped through the system. And it's pretty easy to slip through the system. And we'll get to that, and we'll drill that point in time after time. So here Senator Feinstein inquires about marriage fraud, where basically, this is sham marriages. And, here Navarro replied that this marriage fraud is taken very seriously. He also stated previously that fiancé visa applications are given the most scrutiny of any visas. And this is kind of a recent development, since, the last couple of years, since the actual San Bernardino attack happened. So the reason that fiancé visas are given the most scrutiny is that it's the fastest and easiest way for terrorists to get into the country. So he's saying of all the different visa applications, the most scrutiny is done with fiance visas. And the reason for that is because we already had a terrorist come into the country on a fiance visa and kill Americans. So that's the end of that topic. That's the end of the C-SPAN video, but we'll be going back to it. So the next topic is the whole of government approach and the indicators. So this is the INA Act, and this is Section 104A, where it says a Secretary of State shall be charged with the administration and enforcement of the provisions of this Act and all other immigration and nationality laws relating to the powers, duties, and functions of diplomatic and consular officers of the United States. So all the policies and procedures are up to the Secretary of State to establish. And then it says, except those powers and duties and functions conferred upon the consular officers relating to the grantal or refusal of visas. So what this is saying is that consular officers have the final say. And the Secretary of State can design and administer all of the policies and procedures that are used to guide the consular officers, but the consular officers have the final say in the granting or refusal of visas. So there's a little thing here about the, immigration officers. So immigration officers, whether they're, with the USCIS or consular officers in the United States consulates, these people are hired into the system at an entry-level position. So you see up at the top, GS5 or GS7 employees and promotions to a maximum level of GS9. So GS3 and 4 are typically internships for college students that are coming in to do a part-time internship. And in GS5 to 7 are entry-level positions, new college graduates or newly hired people. And GS7 to 8 are mid-level. So these guys go up to a maximum grade level of 9. It's not even in a management position. So in other words, an entry-level U.S. Department of State employee will be deciding the final approval or denial on all visa cases, fiance visa cases. So the whole of government approach uses a whole of government indicator system, which is a statistical analysis of information contained on or derived from the I-129F fiance visa application form. So this is our definition here. You won't see this written down anywhere because the whole of government approach is, for matters of national security, it's not published. So in other words, when you fill out this form and you send it in and people enter it into a database, some fields they enter in and some fields are derived. For example, you enter in your birth date and your fiance's birth date, and then there's another field that says difference in age, and that's an indicator. So there's a lot of indicators. Just about everything on this form can be considered an indicator. That's why they put it there. So you can get a good idea if you're a US Citizen Petitioner or a fiance on what these indicators are by looking at red flags, because that's what normal people call them. So the I-129F or fiance visa red flags, if you look that up with Google, you'll find some fiance visa forums. It'll tell you what all what you should do if you're a petitioner is get into each one of these hits and start accumulating, copy and paste a list of indicators down from each one of them, and then add them as you go into each site, add the additional ones, and you'll come up with a pretty comprehensive list on what the red flags are. And probably you already know, but you should be aware of the red flags to know how they affect you and how you should handle that in an interview, because you do want to address these things. So I'm going to fly through this part. This is just the I-129F form. I'm not sure if it's been updated. This is 6/30/2016. It was also valid through last year, and I don't know if they've added any new forms or not. You should always go up to the USCIS site and download the current version of the form. But all these fields on these forms, I'll just flip through the next couple pages. Just about everything on here can be used as an indicator, indicating something out of the ordinary, where you and your fiance might be marked as suspect. And so there's 6 pages to the form. Okay, now this is the I-129F that came from the San Bernardino terrorists. I got it from a newspaper in Los Angeles. The San Bernardino terrorists were born 336 days apart. Now, is that an accident? No, it's not an accident. Because why? Because the target groups, which are terrorists, sham marriage people, victims of human trafficking, and then other types of fiancé visa fraud, they all know what the indicators are. So say a sham marriage lawyer, a law firm, immigration law firm that's actually posing as an immigration law firm a lot of the time. They hook up a sham marriage. What that is the foreign fiancé is paying a certain sum of money, ranging from $20, $30, $40, $80,000, basically whatever they can get out of them. They're paying for U.S. citizenship, and the sham marriage law firms hook people up or they pair people because they want to avoid indicators, because they're in a sham marriage business. They don't want to get caught. You get caught, you go to prison. So they're always looking to pair couples together that have no indicators. Similar income, similar education, similar age, similar everything, so that there's nothing different about them. There's no indicators in the magical indicator system that would indicate that these people are fraudulent. So that's the whole idea. So the terrorists had the same idea. Any 12-year-old could get through the system, and this terrorist picked out a gun-toting lady from actually from Pakistan. And they lied on the form. They lied about having met, and they lied about where she lives, because I think she came in through Saudi Arabia or United Emirates or somebody on the Arab Peninsula. She didn't come from Pakistan, but she had a Pakistani address that she failed to mention on her form. Terrorists can lie, and terrorists can also pick out people whose birth dates are really similar. So anyways, this is the case. I went up on the internet and put their case number in, and they were approved on March 14th, 2014. And, here I say, the word is out. The incompetent U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the equally incompetent U.S. Department of State uses an indicator system that cannot possibly identify terrorists, because terrorists lie, and because there's no indicator to a threat to national security. As Emmerich said, there was nothing on the form that was an indicator that she was a threat to national security. So she got into the country easily and killed 14 people and injured a load more. So that's the end of the indicator system. Okay, this is a new topic, the all-important fiancé visa interview mandated by the INA. Remember, the Immigration and Nationality Act mandates that a person-to-person, face-to-face interview be conducted at the U.S. consulate, and the consular officer during that interview has the final say of whether or not the case is approved or denied. So there are 4 possibilities for every fiancé visa case. You have number 1 here is people in legitimate and loving relationships who have a fiancé visa approved. That's really good. That's what should happen. Then you have couples who are criminal, fraudulent, and posing as a real couple, and their fiancé visas are denied. I'd really like to know the stats on this, because we have seen that, masses of people who are criminal and fraudulent and terrorists sliding through the system with ease. So we don't think that actually number 2 happens very often, where you have a criminal, fraudulent relationship and they actually catch that. Usually they're approved. And then number 3 possibility is criminal, fraudulent, and posing as a real couple, and these people are approved. This happens quite a bit, as you saw on video number 1. Terrorists can slide through the system with ease. Sham marriages, hundreds every year are caught after the fact, after they get through. Only when they find, one fraudulent sham marriage couple, and then they start investigating the law firm and find out that there's hundreds more. And also victims of human trafficking by the hundreds, are criminal, fraudulent, and they also get approved. So number 3 is very, very common. And then number 4, couples who are in a legitimate loving relationship whose fiancé visas are denied. Now this is kind of a rarity. There are, going back to about 2015, there were in the 500s, that denied fiancé visas, and the most recent year we have stats on is 2016, because 2017 isn't done yet. So in 2016 there were about 660 denied fiancé visas, and we believe that the vast majority of them, maybe even 600 of the 660, were denied illegally because there was no reason, there was no sound reason based on science and based on statistics and based on just common sense. There was no reason to deny the couple. So what we're getting here is a lot of, there are a lot of places on the internet, visa forums, social media, where fiancés will, after the interview, they will write down their experience in the consulate. So when you go to a consulate and you're asked a few questions by the consular officer, you spend a few months being nervous about the interview, then you're going to remember the 3 or 4 questions that you're asked. And then people document these. They document them on visa forms because they're asked to document things like this on visa forms so that you can help other people. And they document them. They document what happened in social media too. So the government might not realize that they're being graded, but they are. And there's, this is by the hundreds, people documenting what happened in the interview. So what we're going to do is go through an initial audit. Now I made the original audit here of denials and approvals. So this page here is denials, and I'm not going to stop at every page here, but I encourage you to pause the video and read what happened in these interviews. So these are denials. My fiancé K1 visa was denied. The CO gave his reason. The relationship is not bona fide. We have been in a relationship for 5 years. So this sounds kind of suspicious. You get a couple, they're in a relationship for 5 years and they have proof of it, and their K1 visa was denied for why? Because the CO thought the relationship is not bona fide. We'll get into this later, but there's a lot of corruption here. So this is page 1 of denials. There's a bunch of pages. You can read through some of this stuff and see some crazy, crazy reasons why somebody was denied. Like, they like this one here already, they denied a K1 visa for this couple and advised them to get married. So they got married, and then they applied for a marriage visa, a spousal visa, CR1, and then they were denied for that. So, you wonder what's going through these people. Keep in mind that these are low-level, consulate officers who, there's no such thing as a formal denial quota, but, I'd hate to go into an interview at the last of the month and there were no denials this month, because you got a target on your back if you have a high number of indicators. So pause this video and read the denials, and I'm just going to skip through the next few pages. So as you can see, the reason for most denials are due to the failure to prove the existence of a bona fide relationship. So the immigration officer, it's like this. If you apply for a fiancé visa, I think the times are, the times are always given on these sites, and I haven't really looked at times lately. But usually you're looking at about 7 months, after you apply for a fiancé visa, or 8 months or 9 months. After you apply for a fiancé visa, between that time and the time of your interview, 7 or 8 months have passed, or 8 or 9 months. I think 7 would be pretty fast. So, couples are, they bring in a proof of an ongoing relationship, which means, we filed this 7 or 8 months ago, but here's proof of what's going on. Here's proof, screenshots, like a daily occurrences. You might talk to your fiance, or you might do a video call, and you might have a screen prints of, all video calls for 1 week, and do 1 week a month or something like that. And you bring all that into the consulate officer, they never look at it. So, and the reason they never look at it is that the case is predetermined before the interview. And the government would like to argue with me, but they can't argue, because we have people that have gone through the interview process and got denied and approved, and they all feel the same thing, that the interview is a farce. So here's an initial audit of approvals. So here they ask 7 questions, or 8, This is a lot more than usual. Sometimes they only ask 2 or 3. So this is an approval. This is an approval. Ask a couple simple questions while being fingerprinted. Within 10 minutes, I told my fiance that she could leave and was congratulated. So, and also in this case, didn't ask for any supporting documentations, financials, photos, and these are the words of the people that went into the interview. You can look at all these quotes and look this stuff up on the internet. This is I just grabbed people's exact quotes, everything they wrote, and pasted it in here. So there's nothing there's no smoke and mirrors here on our part. So let's just go through the next several screens here, and you can pause and read when you want to pause and read. Here's one that's only 4 questions. And of course, we don't know what happened in this interview, because these people are dead now. But these are the San Bernardino terrorists, and what could have? This is another indication of how much of a farce this interview is. The couple never even met. She didn't know anything about him. She knew his name, occupation, whatever. And she's a radicalized terrorist, an Islamist. He found her on some site, some kind of ISIS social media site, like find a gun-toting wife to kill Americans site, find a gun-toting wife.com. So he went up there and he was able to find, maybe he's searching through for people that were born the same day, and then he maybe chats back and forth a few times and says, I'm going to file a fiance visa for you. Can you handle an automatic weapon? And of course you want to kill Americans. That's the site I'm on. So this case was approved with no or little indicators. The consular officer was unable to detect the fact that she knew very little about her fiance, and she was indeed a terrorist. Did the consulate officer catch that? No. Because he's not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. So this is just saying whether you're denied or approved, the immigration officer never looks at the volumes of proof of an ongoing relationship, isn't worried about that stuff, which is kind of strange. They call it secondary information, but still, anybody with anybody over 12 years old ought to be able to comprehend the fact that you filed this several months ago, and the only proof that you're still talking to each other is in what your fiance brings with her or him to the interview. So why would you not look at it? Craziness. So here's another thing that the overwhelming consensus of everybody who goes through the process, approved or denied, is that something's decided ahead of time, because they couldn't have possibly decided something in the interview. 2 or 3 questions, congratulations. 2 or 3 questions, you're denied. So in summary, the INA places the importance of the face-to-face interview at the consulates, but everybody knows that the interview is a joke. So that's the end of that topic.